content creation is like a non-negotiable for people who want to be an entrepreneur, who are curious about making their own moves in life, who are curious about maybe having a secondary stream of income. Like, I just feel like these days it's a non-negotiable.
Kahlie, welcome to the show. I'm so happy that you're here and that you get to grace the audience with some amazing advice and perspectives. You have an extensive knowledge of helping entrepreneurs and business owners. The director of operations for Josh Axe, as well as, oh my gosh, I already forgot the name of the other business. What is it?
Chief Operating Officer for Celadora Studios, and I moonlight as a Director of Partnerships for Dr. Josh
Okay,
Axe.
there you go. Wow, I already heard it. All right, amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited. As I was already saying, I think what I want to get into and start talking about is just operations, since that's kind of a strong point for you. And as I was mentioning before, I talked to a lot of my friends, other business owners who are like, I need better systems and operations. I need things to run on. So I kind of want to hear your perspective on all that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, honestly, it wasn't until 4 years ago until I even knew what operations was in the context of a business. I've heard of the word operator and knew that that was in the context of the military, but I honestly did not know and understand and have a framework of what it means to be an operator within the context of a business. So I kind of got my start into the world of operations right around the time that I had my son, which was like which you've met, Wyatt, a very pivotal moment for me personally and within my career. It really marked the starting point of me diving headfirst into the world of operations, which is also the back end of the business. And I started out as a virtual assistant, and I really got in on the ground floor when there was a huge boom in course creators, coaches, people developing an online presence, getting a following, and actually monetizing that following through brand partnerships. So blogging was really big, and you could make a ton of money writing a blog, which is crazy to think about these days. But if you got in on the ground floor when it was really hot, you were killing it. And so I started working as a VA on the back end for a lot of these creators. And I kind of quickly found that I'm a natural born operator. And what that means really is you're able to take somebody's big idea, big vision, big passion, and put pen to paper and really map out what that actually looks like in terms of execution, in terms of follow through, in terms of measuring those goals and being able to pivot the business. So if you think about, the CEO really setting the direction, the COO or a head of operations or somebody who is really just skilled in project management, even as that's a core discipline of somebody in operations, are going to tell you and the company how to get there. And they're going to mitigate risks. They're going to anticipate challenges. They're going to oversee the entire company in terms of, departments, and they're thinking externally about vendors, internally about team. They're looking at resources. They're looking at process. And a huge part of that is also looking at systems. And so that is something that I found that I had a natural born talent for. I'm convinced it's stemming from anxiety that I deal with, where I have to be in control and have to be like, okay, but is this going to happen? So I like to joke and say that a lot of people with this skill set, they tend, especially if they're women, tend to have a little bit of anxiety, but it's good, healthy anxiety. And I will say, I recently saw that the CIA looks for people with anxiety because that as there's some kind of hidden skill set in there, which I can testify because I do have anxiety and I am high.
You're going to have plans. Yeah.
And if you think about it, the people, the entrepreneurs and the leaders, the visionary entrepreneurs in businesses, they oftentimes are risk averse, and their counterpart, which is the head of operations, director of operations, COO, depending on the level of business and the annual revenue and the team size, whatever you call them, they're typically a really good counterpart. They're a little bit more risk averse. They ask questions, they poke holes in plans, they can be kind of more of a doubting Thomas, which is why it's really crucial for a business that wants to scale and grow. You have to take risks, and you have to have somebody on the front lines being the face of the business. You have to have somebody going out there and making deals and shaking hands and making promises that sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, we can't fulfill on this, and here's why. And they're like, figure it out because it's happening. This is the direction of the company. So it's a really good idea for a business to invest in having somebody be at the helm of operations for sure.
I love that. Okay, so from my understanding is you started out VA and then you basically went and qualified yourself to then get some awesome jobs. Like, can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that is like incredible. I love it. So what were you doing before you were even doing the VA stuff?
Girl, my story is everywhere. And I love what you said. I think I'm going to borrow that phrase for life is I qualified myself, baby.
Yes.
And honestly, Izzy, before I had my son, I was unrecognizable. You would not recognize me in terms of my my presence, my confidence, my communication, everything. Like literally, I lived the majority of my life based on external factors. So I wanted you to give me a binder of here's how you can live your life to please others and to be recognized as a perfect person by society's standard. I don't know. I know this is not a therapy session. I need to go to therapy about it. I don't know what it was, but I was always like straight A student, 4.0, followed the rules, give me a box. I will stay inside of it. I will always color inside of the lines and I will always get the check mark, and was kind of constantly looking for validation and approval from whoever it was in authority, honestly. And so, that led me down kind of like the quote unquote safe path where I did all of the right things. I made all the great grades. But what is crazy is we had a really interesting twist and turn of events because I actually stumbled into a super, super radical form of Christianity, which I'm a Christian now. And we'll talk about how I was healed from a lot of the trauma and the things and whatnot. But I really went down this path where I was like, oh, new milestone, new authority figure, new way to get the checkbox. And I'm going to go climb this ladder and be at the very top and be God's most amazing soldier. And I'm going to be like, approval for life, not even life, but eternity. And so when you put eternal stakes on my external drive, that is a recipe for cult. That is a recipe for cult vibes. And I did it to myself. So, I went to college. I actually was undergrad in nursing, and girl, wouldn't you know it, I dropped out and moved to Africa and became a missionary and sold all my things and lived on a compound and was in a dangerous part of Africa, lived in a straight up shed. I will send you pictures because it is a wooden shed. And there was a electric fence around the entire compound because it was very dangerous. But the electric fence did not work and we did not have the money to fix it. So I am talking extreme search for external validation and approval. So that's where it was.
I did not know that.
It's wild. I'm taking your listeners on a journey today, I guess.
Good.
It wasn't planned. But yeah, so then honestly, my world view and belief system and everything really came crashing down because if you start building on that foundation, it's bound to happen. And it came in the form of my dad having a brain aneurysm while I was staying overseas. And honestly, that was my worst nightmare. My dad is my best friend. He's my hero. I love him. I look up to him for everything. that was honestly my number one worst fear. And so, you know, I looked to leadership there and I said, hey, I'm going home. And it was met with, well, you better be careful because you might be following Satan's plan for your life because this is God's plan for your life type thing. That was the rhetoric. That was how I took it. I don't know. Looking back, I'm like, I don't know if she actually said that, but some of this was definitely conveyed and that's how I received it. And in that moment, like literally just like, I like was like, well, if this is God and this is it, like, I don't want it because my dad is real. My dad's love for me is real. My dad, like, I am going to be by his bedside and I'm going to be there for when he recovers and I'm whatever that looks like. And, you know, so when I got back home, I was like, oh my gosh, everything I knew and believed for and worked towards, like, and gave up is completely in shambles now. Now I am trying to enter back into the world, but don't have a degree, don't have a direction, which was complete opposite of everything that I even wanted and dreamed of. I just thought that I had to give it up to be a good Christian and to make God happy. And so I actually went back and started working for a nonprofit Christian organization because that was my only like contact, my only way in. And I felt kind of like a fraud because I was like feeling I was living two different lives because I wasn't in alignment with where they were at. And I also felt shame because I felt like they would kick me out if they knew I was struggling with all of these, you know, I guess what they say now is deconstruction. But I didn't have a word for it back then. And so I like honestly randomly chose a master's program. I saw somebody post that they had graduated with their doctorate in occupational therapy. I found a program near the work, my work, and I, you know, went and pursued my degree in occupational therapy. It was a 2 years master's program while I worked at that organization. Worked at that clinic as an occupational therapist for a year. And then I had my son and like everything completely changed. And we can definitely get into that, but I feel like I'm like sucking up the arrow.
Yeah, I love it because you're passionate and
yes, it's like it's a story that lives in me for sure. And I would say like, so I guess how I got into this career, I mean, that really, it's like I didn't study it. I didn't know about operations. I did not like, I did not have an entrepreneurial bug at all. I was like, go to school for this many years and work in a healthcare type of person. I had no context for business. But once I had my son, I realized I wanted to find out a way to stay home with him and to still be able to bring an income. And so I was commuting like 45, 50 minutes back and forth Monday through Friday to go to the clinic and work as an occupational therapist. And it just wasn't cutting it as a young mom whose son would not take a bottle worth anything. He wanted these puppies on tap and did not want anything else. So I was like, well, I got to figure this out. So I did a lot of research. I found that like VA, becoming a virtual assistant, was like kind of like the lowest barrier to entry for remote work and for online work. And that's not discounting VAs. VAs are incredible. I'm just saying like for me and my skill set and my abilities at that time, I felt like that was the quickest way to get into the world of the online, online business. And so I got a few clients and started to really see that there was a huge need for back-end management in a business. There was a huge need for, having a counterpart to that, big idea entrepreneurial person to actually getting stuff done, making sure things are done efficient. I have like I don't know, it's like a core value of mine to be very efficient. Like it's just naturally, I'm going to any business, they're like any workflow, I will find inefficiencies in it and I will fix it because it's just something in me. And I find that a lot of operators are like that. So that's how I got into this world. I then pursued a certification, a director of operations certification, and that gave me more of like an educational framework and context and built my skills. And then I entered into the full-time role as an integrator slash COO, chief operating officer for a content production agency where I'm at now. So yeah, long
Wow.
story, but that's how I got here.
I love that, because that
Yeah,
wasn't what you like. First it was nursing, right? That was originally what you
yeah.
thought and you didn't
And
do.
it
And
was the family trade. Yeah, nursing
wow.
was the family trade. So that's, and again, it was really like, oh, follow the lines, get the approval. Yes.
Yeah. But the fact that you found that, qualified yourself, like created it, and like negotiated into having a good job, like I feel like that's part of it actually. Like I started to realize, I was like, I was like, how can I, when I, before I even started my business, I was like, I want to have a lot of money, but how do I even do that? I realized like either you need to be like operations, like a great worker in a specific field that can negotiate for a high salary, or you need to create something. And it was
Yeah.
kind of like that. It was like either or. And I was like, I'm not that person. I'm not the person. I'm like the visionary. I have the dream, the big, but like, let's go for it. The drive to like just make it happen. But like, even the couple times I've met with you and spoke about my business, you've been like, all right, well, what's your plan for this? Like, what's the immediate plan? How can you do that? You're like, what's your Q3 goal? Like, I remember I would ask me, I was like, I don't know, like survive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's really what it is really identifying what are your strengths and playing to them. And I will say, like, typically people that are more of the visionary entrepreneurs, is like those are the people that are super comfortable in the limelight. And in fact, the limelight gravitates towards them. Like opportunities just come. People really like you. People want to work with you. And relationships are really one of the strongest assets in developing those strategic partnerships. And if you're in, depending on what stage of business you're in, is managing board members, managing all of these different things happening, and closing deals for the business as well.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's really really important to play to your strengths. But and again, I think I would consider myself an entrepreneur. I guess that's a
Yeah.
word now, where I do feel like the entrepreneurial bug has bit me, but I am an entrepreneur within the businesses that I serve now. I really take ownership, and I also like negotiate for equity, and I, find deals where I can have ownership, and I propose deals where, hey, you want to go in on this with me? Like I'm a huge proponent of having multiple streams of
Yeah.
income and not really just trading, dollars for hours. In fact, I don't trade dollars for hours. I trade dollars for results. And so I think that's huge as well. But yeah, I mean, really, there's right now is like I feel like a never before time in history to be able to create your own path in life. The opportunities are really endless if if you get creative. And key word is like, or key phrase is coloring outside of the box, which is not
Yeah.
something that I ever did before I had my son.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I was just discussing that, especially in the world of like social media, because I actually haven't even been live on Instagram. I'm coming up on 1 year, and like podcasts, like everything. Because I just went all in. I was like, we're ripping the band-aid off. We're going all in on everything. And
Yeah.
what I realized is like, I have friends tell us to me all the time, like, oh, I can't just post. Like, I only post like twice a year. I can't just post a video of me doing it. I'm like, dude, there are no rules. And once you start realizing there really are no rules, like you just have to take a piece of the pie. Like that's it. And you start playing that game, like financially, like with like all the spaces, you realize like, oh my gosh, like the people who are like really scaling, the only difference is that they're just going for it and trying. Like everyone else is like, I gotta just stay the course. I gotta do what's safe. What's like yeah, it's crazy.
You're like speaking straight truth here. I'm like taking so much, like there's just soundbite after soundbite after soundbite. It's true. And I feel like literally if you take nothing away from this podcast is, there are no rules. Throw out the rule book. And which can be terrifying for somebody like me who, is the operator, is the risk mitigator, is the whole poker, what have you. But in the context of, your life purpose and your aspirations in terms of, career and money and ownership, there are no rules. I
Yeah.
think that's a huge mantra that I'd love to take hold of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there really aren't, and I have to like consistently remind myself of that, right? I have to like remind, especially I feel like with content creation too. I'm like, oh, I gotta, no, I can't do that. I'm just posting. No, I can post whatever I want to post. Like, and the chances are of you actually landing with more people because you're just being real, it goes up because you're not like, oh, I can only stay in this one space. You're like, no, this is me. Like sometimes I'm goofy, sometimes I do this. Like I'm gonna post about this, like whatever. And it's like authenticity is the highest vibration. So it goes the furthest anyways. And
It's so
sometimes when we're staying in that box, when we're staying in the lines, it's actually inauthentic. Especially when we have a dream and a calling for something more. And so then we're in that, and that's why it's like low vibes, doesn't feel good, all the things. So we actually have to break out of that so that we can like step into our future and have our potential and impact that we were like designed to have. So I love it. I love what you've done.
true. It's so true. I really feel like we were like humanity was made to overcome challenges. And so often we come up against a challenge and don't recognize it as an opportunity. And especially when it comes to being online and posting, and because honestly, that is where like you can monetize the quickest. That is where like if you want to be in any form of business, you need to be online. And so the biggest hurdles are so many hurdles, but a lot of people come up to those feelings of those challenges and shrink back, when in reality if they can just embrace like my entire DNA and makeup was truly made to overcome challenges, like then it changes. And yeah, I think you stop living and you might as well die if you don't want to look forward to something, try something new,
Yeah.
and overcome something. Like
Yeah.
you genuinely have to have that in your life. And like
Yeah.
even like with working out, like it's like if you don't have any challenges right now in life, like
Yeah.
you need to be working out harder. You need
Yeah.
to be fabricating challenges because you're not
Yeah.
growing if you don't.
Yeah. And it's like people talk about, I hear like, well, it's just, I like to stay in my comfort zone. I like to stay. And the truth is, and I forget where I heard this, but it's not a comfort zone. It's a familiar zone. And when if you are not growing, you are not moving forward, you're not comfortable. You don't feel good. We don't feel good as humans just being like, I'm not moving, I'm not growing, I'm not learning, I'm not chasing, I'm not inspiring. Like I'm doing nothing. You're just in that familiar. And the truth is, everything that's unfamiliar and new is scary. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. And like, once you can just accept that and be like, yeah, it is. But everyone else who's done something great, who shot for the stars, who believed in their dream, has felt that way. I remind myself all the time, like, everyone has, who's an expert or the top or has the most money started with nothing. Like they started not knowing anything about it and had to just go for it. And that was you, like even specifically with your job, like you literally had to like go out, learn that, do all the things. Like it's incredible. Like more people need to do that though.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah. And I think I had oh sorry, it's breaking up.
you're good. Go ahead.
I mean, I had a huge motivator, with my son, like having him literally like changed me chemically. So, identify and dig deep of that motivation, be very, very clear of your why and paint the picture of the future you want, and then say, okay, like what's it going to take to get there? So, yeah.
So I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit here. So you work a
Yeah.
lot specifically with you said on like the content creation side of with entrepreneurs and stuff, right? Business owners and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a the head of operations or whatever. I'm not big on titles. I run the show on the back end
Yeah.
for a content production agency. So
Yeah.
we specialize in personal branding for
Mhm.
entrepreneurs who want to uh, build more attention online. They want a personal brand on that line. They want to be seen as a thought leader, an expert in their space. And typically like our ideal customer is somebody who's a serial entrepreneur, and their goal is longevity in the marketplace, multiple investments. They may be writing a book, or they want a network deal or something of that nature. And really these days, if you want that, you really need to have a strong online presence. But my favorite type of person is to work with is somebody who has like an actual deep calling and a very clear conviction of impact, because I don't think there needs to be, attention for the sake of attention. It's like, what is your end goal? How are you using your platform? And so that's our mission as a company, is we want to amplify meaningful voices in the world. And the biggest way to do that right now is through content, but it's also a huge challenge and drawback to people who actually have a voice and actually have conviction and actually have something to share, because there's a lot of hurdles that get in the way when posting online. It's like, where do you post? How much do you post? What about the algorithm? There's so many different platforms. Like, what about email marketing? And we should do this and that. And it's like so confusing. And then it's like, then my camera, my audio, my lighting, and I don't feel confident and I don't know, so there's so many problems to solve in that arena, and so many people to serve in that arena. And our goal, and my goal, is to find those people who are really allowing those struggles to stop them from getting their voice out into the world and making an impact, and helping them overcome that with things like systems, processes. And honestly, some people who have the budget and which we love doing the done for you side, they just want it done for you. Like, hey, I am the CEO, I'm the visionary, I'm busy, I'm doing this. Like, just come alongside me as a team and become the media arm of my business and make it happen. And I'll do whatever you say. I'll get on camera at what time. And, that's really what we've done internally, is we've spent like the better part of a year on perfecting that production cycle for a multi-passionate entrepreneur to get their thoughts and ideas on the world on multiple platforms in multiple different formats every day, like clockwork. So
I love that. And that you can cast a wide net. Because for me starting out, I was actually realized how nice it was to be at zero, especially since I had not been on media in years, hadn't even had Instagram. And that's why I will tell some of my friends, I'm like, dude, you're going to post stuff in the beginning. Almost no one's going to watch. Almost no one's going to listen. And that is not bad. That is not about, and I remind myself of that all the time. Like, dude, even if you have something that tanks, like, it's actually better, because if for the build, because I feel like sometimes it can be really hard. If you already have this big following, then you go and try and do that, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? But it's actually kind of nice if you are starting at the bottom to just like work your way into it, because I could see that also being like super overwhelming to already have influence and then be like, oh, now I'm going to do this. And you're like,
Yeah, I really feel like content creation is like a non-negotiable for people who want to be an entrepreneur, who are curious about making their own moves in life, who are curious about maybe having a secondary stream of income. Like, I just feel like these days it's a non-negotiable. It's like, oh yeah, here's my email address and here's my social media handles. Like, it's how you present yourself in the world. Not for everyone, obviously. I think it's beautiful for people who are online and they're, serving in different industries, and they're working within businesses. And I think that's great. But I think probably the majority of your viewers and your audience and what aligns with you is people who are wanting to do big things.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. And for athletes, it's key. So then what about you as far as content creation? Are you going to head down that path?
I did have an exercise in like getting out of my comfort zone the other day. I do. As you can tell, I really like people. I'm very expressive. I'm like, I love a good story. I like to connect. And I definitely think I like randomly posted just free for all, like straight posted TikToks like that made no sense, had no meaning, like there's no purpose in them, just as
Yeah.
an exercise, like get over that initial hump.
Yes.
But
Rip
yeah,
the Band-Aid off.
definitely.
Yeah.
I definitely want to continue to post, and I think I need to like identify. It's like I think what I want to talk about and why I want to talk about, but
Mhm.
I really thought at that time, like honestly, it was just important for me to take action. Sometimes to rip the band-aid off and to get it over with. And I've wanted to delete it since, but I'm like, no, I'm leaving it up.
Yeah. No, I love that. No, every time you have a story or something and I see it, I love it. I'm like fully invested. You know what about like your toes and like sandals? I don't know, just like playing resin. Like I remember it. I remember it because you were just being you. You were just being you. I loved it. I was like, give me more.
Yes. Listen, I'm also, if I decide to go all in with it, I'll need to call you for support because I'm a sensitive girl. I'm like the hater comments. I'm just like, I'd probably crumble. But yeah, I think again, that's a really good, personal growth exercise for me to
Yeah.
intentionally put myself in that, I
Yeah.
guess, quote unquote harm's way if you're thinking about, my
Yeah.
insecurity itself.
It
But
actually really helps you do the work to get like solid with yourself because the thing is like you're gonna be if you're growing, you're gonna be posting a lot. There's gonna be a lot of content, which means you're gonna get a lot of hate if you're going viral, which means that people are just gonna hate on random different things. They're just gonna try anything. And eventually, like one or two of those is actually going to be like a little bit closer to the heart, right? Like some of them, I'm like, I don't care. Like you're mocking me on this. But some of them where you're like, ooh, that's actually something that got me. And then you're like, it's actually just information to be like, okay, where is that actually coming from? Where in my childhood did I have that insecurity, that experience that made me feel like this? And so I try and use it like that. I'm like, if it actually, like, you can feel when something actually like gets you, like, it's
yeah.
like, it's a little bit hot, little like, I get like blood to the ears, something like that. And then I'm like, that's information. All it is information in me because it's a random stranger, just saying something that I'm like, what are you even talking about, bro? You don't even know me. But I just use that as and that's helped me.
Yes, what's funny? I recently started a trigger log in my iPhone. And honestly, shout out to Mike Posner or Posner. I'm sorry, forgetting.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with him, by the way, like his stuff
Yeah.
and his content. And he's like taking this whole like mindset shift. Like everyone needs
He's
to go follow.
super cool. He's like a like a hiker.
He's
Like, yeah.
so cool. And he had like hosted a free Zoom webinar, which is like unheard of these days, especially with somebody at his caliber and with how
Yeah.
many crazies people are out there. But he's so like kind and like people were like disrupting sometimes and like trying to come and he was just like so kind and whatever. So he had mentioned something of the nature of like a trigger log. He called it something else, but I started doing it and it's like it's like called a mental reframe log, and I'll have my trigger of like what caused that, what caused me, my ego to rise up, what caused my heart rate, what caused me to be feeling like I'm having a bad day. So I'll write what that down is. I'll write why that triggered me, and then I'll write a reframe. So like a reframe is really powerful for honestly like well let's go back. So like let me give you an example. So if I were to say, oh, I have to do so much today. Oh my gosh, I have so much to do. I have to go do this. Da, 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 da. The reframe is I get to do this.
Yeah.
And like you can, and actually this is something that I learned from one of like Tony Robbins's coach, like one of the businesses that I was in, like paid for them to come in and coach the team. But that in and of itself, like if you sit there and go through and read your triggers out loud, you will see that your physiology, like your body, like your heart rate gets up, like you get mad. But
Yeah.
then when you go through and do the reframe, like
Yeah.
physiologically, your body calms down and you have a much, different outlook on the problem. So it's really kind of highlighting like you have the choice to view something one way or the other, and one serves you and one doesn't. One seeks to disconnect and one connects and
Yeah.
finds, meaning and peace. And honestly, we're all really just after peace and acceptance. So we're not
Yeah.
helping ourselves when we are feeding into those triggers, believing them and speaking them. So
Yeah. Yeah. Has that process like helped with your anxiety? Like just being able to look at log
yeah,
and yeah.
absolutely, it has helped, but look, I'm human too, and like I had a horrible start to the morning, and honestly, I was like, I don't want to write in this trigger log. I'm pissed, and I'm like, I want to feel this, and this is why I'm validated, and this and this. But yeah, like it didn't serve me. It doesn't serve you to hang on to those because if you look at the symptoms and what comes from that, it comes from it leads into a fight with your husband. It leads you to be more short with your 3-year old. It leads you to be frustrated going into a sales call. It just doesn't serve you the longer you hang on to things like that. So yeah, having that as an exercise. And again, this is a framework and like a framework slash system. Like I'm huge on like identifying what are the frameworks, what are the principles, what are the systems, what are the processes that can help get you to your end goal. And again, taking it back to operations, it's like that's why it's so important to not only have a goal and have a big vision, because like that is, you know, a huge purpose in life is to have a
Yeah.
vision, but a method and a means to get there. And that's how I see, being able to get there
Yeah.
through all of those.
So for someone listening who is an entrepreneur, they're in the beginning phases, online presence, like all the things, they have an offer, they're feeling overwhelmed, they're like, I want more systems. What are like 2 or 3 things that you would say be like, bottom line, you need to have these things set in place so that you can move forward without losing your mind?
Totally. I would definitely have some sort of project management system in place. I think the biggest mistake that I see people make is having all of their to-dos and things on their plate and their goals in their heads. So they
Mm-hmm.
make it to where it's almost impossible to transition from solopreneurship to having a team because it's all in your head. And so unless you can afford and really have somebody come in to be the operator and you can
Yeah.
hire and you can recruit and do all of those things and have somebody do it for you, if you're really just starting out and you don't have the budget, I would say get yourself into a good project management system. I feel like I'm not like I am project management system agnostic. Like I feel like they all work towards the same goals and do the same things. There's Notion. I love and prefer Notion, and you can actually buy super cheap templates of like a Notion workspace geared towards handling every aspect of your business. So you
Yeah.
really want to think about your business in the back end world of your business in a few different ways. So you want to have a way of managing your leads or your sales pipeline. You need to have their name, their email, the last time you contacted them. You need to have your next follow-up date, your next follow-up action. So those are managing the money that's coming into the business. And then once they convert into a customer or a client, you need to have the same sort of database to identify where they're at in service delivery or whatever type of business you're in. You need to obviously have a log of your customers and what they bought and what they're wanting and how you can potentially upsell and how you can potentially serve them even more, and
Yeah.
survey them and ask questions and get feedback, continuing to do market research and iterate on your offers, your products, your services. And those are all things that can live within a project management system. Of course, everyone thinks like, oh, I'll just write my to-do list in the project management system and then check it off. And like, that's very, very, very basic. I would say like, get in there and do that. Awesome. But you can integrate it with your calendar too. It's like, um, honestly, I would just start with a template and put your sales cycle, your leads in there, put your CRM, your current customers and clients, write down your goals, ask yourself how you're going to get there. And honestly, use ChatGPT. Like ChatGPT has an app and a walkie-talkie feature where you can talk to somebody and you can say, I want you to act as my chief operating officer. I have this really good idea. Here's what it is. As your CEO, as my COO for this business, here's what we do. Here's who we serve. Here's why. What would you tell me to do next? And
Nice.
honestly, we'll come up with some great answers, especially if you're not skilled in it and you don't know what you don't know. It's
Yeah,
really there to help you, see your blind spots, at least
yeah,
until you can afford to hire somebody. Because I personally think unless you already have a skill set that lends itself towards operations, which I do think you can be both. It's rare to be a visionary strategist, like an operations minded person. You can be both. I think you're wasting your time if you're trying to make
yeah,
yourself an operations person and get this course and do this and I can do this, because you can't do it all.
yeah,
Especially, I mean, I think if you want to go big, if you
yeah,
want to stay within a certain range and you just want to be a solopreneur, you
yeah.
can do it. You can do it. You might be sacrificing some things like time, you
Creation. Yeah,
deviation. You're going to have some limitations, which it's going to show in the bottom line. But if you want to trade that off and you're good at making a certain amount, that's
yeah,
certainly fine. You don't need it. It just
yeah,
depends on what your goals are really.
yeah. I think
But yeah,
even for
so I would
me,
say project management system would be
yeah,
huge in using ChatGPT.
ChatGPT project management system, go. Yeah, I like for me, even having a VA is like game changing though too.
It is. It is. I mean, it's crazy how far you can get in a business with you and a VA. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
I've seen people get up to 2 million, 3 million really easily. Once you get past that 2 million and you're continuing to grow, you really need to start implementing a team, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Depending on what your goals are, but I mean, yeah, you can absolutely be making $1 million with you and a VA for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And I think a piece of that, what I've learned with the VA is like, and something I talked to some other business owners is like, sometimes you just want to be like, no, I'll just do it. I'll just do it because I don't want like, and it's like, it's actually helped me grow so much being like, no, I need to be a better leader. I need to give better instructions and I need to communicate very clearly what I need done and when I need it done consistently. And
Oh,
that's actually helped me grown so much.
that's magic right there. And the fact that you've like already learned that lesson in this stage of business is huge, because I see businesses at the 5 to 10 million mark. Or I wouldn't say 10, I would say more like 2 to 5, where the leadership and or the owner has a really hard time with that. And honestly,
Yeah.
you're gonna see high turnover rates in your team. You're
Yeah.
gonna walk the high performers right out the door, because nothing hurts high performers more than micromanagement.
Mm,
And you're really going to limit yourself. But if you're already learning that lesson, and that's the thing, that's the cool thing about this stage of business, is you can start learning the hard lessons that people learn later in life when the stakes are much, much, much,
yeah.
much higher.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great idea for somebody who has a big vision for a big company, for big revenue, multiple streams, is to take advantage of this stage of business and start to learn those hard lessons now when the stakes aren't as high.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Learn it now. Yeah, when you don't have like so much more on the line. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. And I'm so grateful for your time. And I already need to have another business meeting with you. I'm like, I need to talk to you. You need to give me an audit.
Yes, I love that. That's my heart. Like, I've just been getting on phone calls with entrepreneurs, like even locally, like people who have, it's just them and their wife and maybe a few overseas team. And I'm so passionate about asking questions and being like, oh, you should do this, you should do that. So
Yeah.
anytime, hit me up, totally
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Do you like the sorry, I know we're closing, but do you like the problem solving piece of it?
Oh, I'm
Like
obsessed. I'm
that,
obsessed
yeah.
with it. It's like a
Yeah.
sickness. Yeah. I look for problems. Like, it's my husband laughs because it's like I will go anywhere and talk to anyone and be like, "Oh, well, what system are you using?" And like, "Oh, well, what are the challenges you're facing in your business?" And like really, like, it's so funny. I am, and I would say that that's typical of somebody in like a high level operations seat, is they're constantly looking for problems, looking for challenges, looking for bottlenecks, anticipating all of those things as well, making plans to mitigate those potential risks. And yeah, it's just in their blood, man.
Yeah.
it
I
can
love
it really
it.
really annoys the visionary type sometimes, like the super creative people. Because if you're a creative, you can be in a meeting and you could be like in the clouds, like, do this, you should do this. And like, yeah, and we could make this really big feeling here and da da da. And like, I'm like in the back, like, okay, but the project management said, and this wasn't work here because this, and like, can we just land the plane? And next action is,
Yeah.
so it's really somebody, and that's where it's evident of how operators can really take vision and run with it and bring it to life.
Yeah.
And by the time that they do, by the way, those leaders are typically on to another idea and completely derailing that. So it's a difficult balance sometimes, but it means that I'm not never out of a job. So
yeah. Hey, there you go. There you go. Well, thank you so much. And we'll definitely do this again because this is amazing.
Thank you, Izzy.
Thank you for listening. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, I would greatly appreciate if you could share this episode with 5 people you think could benefit from the show. Also, please feel free to connect with me on Instagram at Izzy Chinche or my website at izzychinche.com. Thank you so much for being you. Keep being a leader and making this world a better place.